Well, Merry Christmas. You are so lucky to have Brad Stein Has Issues with God's Comic Brad Stein, where comedy, conservatism, and Christianity collide in a cacophony of clarity. And today we have a very, very, very special guest. It is someone who actually left London, fled with all his might, took all of his shekels, because as you know, they use shekels in London, and he now is the father of a beautiful, prestigious parish in Michigan. His name is Father Calvin Robinson. I first saw him at Oxford University doing a lecture, and he was so good and so interesting and so fighting for free speech in Europe, and he was so adamant about it that he finally said, I got to get out of here because it sucks here. So he's now in America. He's a big First Amendment right guy, and he's just interesting. He's a Christ follower. And so he's unapologetic about that, as opposed to my son Wyatt, who apologizes about everything, including the fact that we are now doing an episode that we had done just earlier, and it was corrupted. And Wyatt did it. Why? Why did you corrupt our first shot at this?
Listen, the first time we did it was, honest to goodness, some of the best banter we have had on this podcast since we started.
Yeah, and
so
then
I figured, why not do it again?
Yeah,
Second
and this
time's the charm.
time, let's make sure it fails miserably.
No. Think about it. If this was the best one we've had, imagine how much better the next one's gonna be.
Yeah, I think that's right. Maybe what we can start doing from this day forward is whenever we really nail something, not use it. I think we should just go ahead and do it the second, because it's always better the second time when both of you are so angry and frustrated that the first one was lost to the corruption of tech.
Yeah, honestly, it's really funny how, despite all of our advances in technology and everything, we still can't invent a stinking soundboard that lets you know when there's a problem.
Yeah, you would think there would be, but nevertheless, here's the good news. We're here now. The folks don't care about all our problems. They really don't, Wyatt.
In fact, they're here for the problems.
They're here for the problems. That's why so many of them have stuck around. That's why Ashley and Nick and Karen and Stephen and Bushquacker and, Paula Fay and just Cara. I mean, everybody. Paul. I mean, people that come from far and wide to watch a special Christmas edition. And it is why, because guess what? Next week is Christmas. And you know what that means, don't you?
I can have a issue-free podcast for Christmas. It's all I ever wanted. It's all I want.
Yeah.
I just want one show that's amazing to actually... Because this isn't... Let's be honest here. This isn't the first time our audio is corrupted and something that we thought was great.
Yeah.
It's always the good ones that mess up.
Yeah. So are you saying then all the ones that work are not so good? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Honestly, yeah. I'm going to go officially on record. This was the only good one.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you.
Only good one.
Here's the good news. You can always do it again. Why? Life is about, let me tell you what life's all about. Do you want to know what life's all about?
Lemons.
It can be. It can be. And then if you take those lemons and you cut them up and you put them in that one of those machine things, or it's not even a machine, it's just kind of some odd shaped alien-looking egg ceramic, and you do this to the lemon, something happens. What is it?
You make a mess.
You make a mess, and then all of the seeds
get caught in the lemonade, and people hate it.
So that's why I say don't bring up lemons. It's a bust. They fail on every level.
Like, honestly, anyone who says when life gives you lemons, make lemonade has never tried to chug straight lemon juice.
You know what? Isn't there like a TikTok thing out there right now, or an Instagram where people like do some kind of lemon shot?
I wouldn't be surprised. TikTok and all that social media stuff is honestly like the genuine death of cognitive thought.
You know what's interesting, Wyatt? Now you are 28, so you're. We've asked this before, so I might as well ask it again so I can get the same answer, which is I have no idea. What are you? You're Gen Z or something, or Gen X, or
oh shoot,
you're a millennial.
I'm millennial or Gen Z, and I quite honestly don't care.
Okay, well now, but it gives us a reference point. But you guys, did you grow up doing selfies?
I think they started getting popular around like late middle to early high school for me.
Okay, so it was okay. But here's one thing that I did notice about the selfie thing. It's really interesting to me. So when I was growing up, we had cameras, but there was no video cameras. When I was growing up, that was, 8 millimeter, right? Is that what it was? 16 millimeter? Maybe. Anyways, you'd have a camera and you would film people, your dad, your grandparents, and it was film inside of a camera. So it's like, or you had these big lights, a big thing you'd hold with literal big giant lamp lights you'd have to hold up to make it bright enough. And that's the old 60s, Christmas around the tree clips you've probably seen on the internet or whatever, and it's kind of grainy and what, but that's what we had. You couldn't hear what they were saying. You'd see the kid going, but you'd need a lip reader to even tell you what you were saying. But that's all we had, right? And you would take pictures, and it was actually, I remember the innovation when they came out with the Instamatic, where you go click, click, and it would go zzz, and you'd watch it develop, and you couldn't wait to see finally that picture that you took, and it's like, oh, he closed his eyes. You even used to have to finish your roll of camera film when you took pictures. Never got to preview it. This is not digital. Then you brought it to like Walgreens or whatever, and they sent it out, and they printed your prints, and then you came back, you paid for them, and you couldn't wait to see, because it was going to be the first time you were going to see what pictures you took.
The first time in like several weeks for you get to see, for once and for all, did Uncle Larry close his eyes?
And that's what happened. It's like, oh, dang, this was good. And you'd go through it and hope that something would pan out.
I mean, 1 out of 6 is fine, right? For $80.
Well, and it's you accepted it. It's just, you just hope that the people would nail it. But here's what I was getting at. There was, especially the older, like your parents or whatever, so they were coming out of the 50s and the 40s, right? Because I was a kid in the 60s. If you went to take a picture of them or your grandmother, they'd always do the same thing. Nope, no pictures. I don't want a picture. I don't want my picture. The movies would have the woman go, no, I don't look right. I don't have my face on. My hair's wrong. They literally couldn't stand getting their picture taken. Then comes your generation, who not only can stand to get their picture taken, can't wait, takes their own pictures and posts them. I mean, seriously, can there be a bigger form of narcissism than an entire generation of people taking pictures of themselves to post to people?
It's like, okay, we have this miraculous technology that can take pictures. It's a calculator, it's a phone, it's an entertainment app, it's a game console, basically. It does every single thing any person on Earth could ever want.
Yep.
I'm going to use it to get likes on Facebook.
I know. Well, that's what I mean, though. But it does corrupt these kids, right? Because it becomes, they actually care if you like it or follow it or whatever. They actually think it gives them value. So it's a messed up thing. And it's Christmas time, son. It's Christmas time. You know what that means? It's a time where we supposedly are celebrating the birth of Jesus. Now that's supposedly, now we know for a fact, I think, actually, that he wasn't born December 25th. I mean, I guess nobody really knows.
I mean, if nobody knows, then doesn't that technically mean there was a 1 in 365 chance for right?
Yeah, but wouldn't you have to add every year up until his birth as well?
Oh, no, because he only has one birthday.
Okay.
Just like everyone else does.
All right. So it's 1 in 365.
Unless it was a leap year. What? Seriously, is it too hard to invent a time scale that doesn't require you to adjust it every 4 years?
Well, it has something to do with the sun, I think. It has something to do with the planetarial things.
It's because the way we divide minutes and hours and stuff isn't perfect.
Okay.
So every 4 years, we're off a day. Which just makes me think, hey, scientists, we give you money, fix your mistake.
Yeah. Well, the scientists are the ones that also gave us daylight savings, which everybody hates.
Well, no. There are some people who do like it. The people who aren't using it.
Yeah. The people that are probably people in dungeons that really doesn't affect. It's kind of like,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
haven't seen the sun in 10 years. So at this point, you can do whatever you want. It could be 3 a.m. for all I care. I don't care because I'm in a dungeon.
I'm sure those folks in Plato's cave don't really mind that much.
They don't. They'll take whatever they can get because they don't know any better. The shadows is reality to them. And Wyatt, speaking of reality, I got to tell you something. I was thinking about Santa the other day because, as you know, we don't have a Christmas tree this year. We're really kind of experimenting with the idea of not getting caught up in the Christmas commercialization. Now, everybody says, it's become so commercialized, right? Christians will get together. It's so commercialized. It's just so ridiculous. And then they go run to the mall and they start buying stuff and running into people and backing into grandmothers and running over people in wheelchairs to get the good deal on, the Snuggly. Do they still have Snuggies? I don't know.
Yeah, well, the reason is it's a lot easier to say, here's the problem, than it is to fix the thing when everyone else is using it. So you're going to get pushback.
Yeah. And that's it. And there's a lot of pushing back of people down the escalator because you're trying to beat them to the store that only has one pair of those left.
Not quite anymore. Black Friday really isn't what it used to be. Now it's all about Cyber Monday.
Yeah, what is the difference?
That's it's on a Monday,
All right.
and it's Cyber.
Well, so everybody's shopping from long.
It's the future.
I got to tell you something. I remember when Amazon first was coming out. I remember thinking, this is not going to work because you're looking at a picture. It's like if I want those shoes, I want to look at it. I want to pick them, go try them on, make sure they feel right, look right. Sometimes they look better on the picture, and you put them on. This isn't what I thought I was getting. And I thought, I'm not going to like it. I want to smell it. I just want the tactile experience. And I mean, it's the greatest invention of all time. You just get all these options. I want that. You click it, boom, boom. I'll bring it to, don't even, listen, just relax. We'll bring it to you. You don't even have to go anywhere. Suddenly you're going to just open your door and there's that thing you wanted yesterday. It's here now. It's just right there. Huh? And then you open it and you, even if at the worst case scenario, it's like, this isn't what I want. You just click a button and then they give you a little sticker, you stick it on and you send it back. It's amazing that they pulled that off.
It is the ultimate example of a universal concept that not many people really think about.
They don't.
Humans are lazy.
Well, they are lazy, and yet they go out on Christmas and they start buying stuff. And, here's something I was also thinking, too. Next week is Christmas, and there's a lot of people who have not done their shopping.
Yeah, I know that. I'm one of them.
Well, what are you waiting for?
People to tell me what they dang want.
Can't you just think of something cool? Like, I'll bet you he'd like that.
I absolutely could.
Yeah.
However, if I'm doing that, I ain't leaving you the receipt.
Come.
Because you made me pick out of my psychic powers.
Yeah.
My psychic powers are never wrong. You don't need a receipt. You're gonna like this.
So
you are going to like this.
So, like, so you buy somebody something, and you're trying to be creative, and and if they said, you know what, thank you, but I don't want it, you don't care if they return it, or you're saying no. If you're not going to tell me what you want, then whatever I give you, you are
because that's what you've
down.
told me. That's what you've told me. You don't care.
Okay.
And that's your choice.
And have you ever had an experience where somebody said, don't care, and so you didn't care, and then they got really angry?
Oh, no, of course not.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you.
Because I made sure to remind them they don't care.
Well, Christmas is hard, Wyatt. And you know what I was also thinking too, and you're a guy, I'm a guy. It is harder for us to shop. I don't know why, but I do know this. If I go shopping for something, I don't shop. I know what I want. I know what store has it. I go to that aisle, I pick it up, I pay for it, and I go home. And I don't get distracted or suddenly say, look at that candle. Oh, look, potpourri. I don't. I don't decide, you know what, I've been needing a new top. Um, and by the way, why do they call tops tops, but not, but they don't call pants bottoms?
Honestly, that's a good question. Also, why do they call it pants if it's singular?
I know they should call it pant and
Yeah,
or bottoms,
yeah, exactly. Or
but they
like,
call it pants, so they make it a plural, and it's not. It's got two legs. It's all attached. It's all attached. Are you telling me that if a squid wore pants, you would have to call it pants?
I think there was one too many S's, but I think the audience got the joke.
Yeah. Well, anyways, I just was curious if you were going to do that. But, I thought to myself, why? One thing about Brad Stein has issues. I don't know if you're aware of this. Have you been around this podcast much?
A little bit.
Okay. Well, I try to inspire people. Wyatt, I hope there's some funny. Most people that first start watching me, unless they uh, are in some ways, paraplegics, and some poor guy is stuck with a caretaker who is, a masochist, and he just sticks them in front of the computer and says, "Watch, Brad Stein has issues," and suddenly the guy's like, "Okay, this is hell on earth." But outside of that poor guy who has no options, people watch because they want to see some comedy, right? Because if they've seen my comedy on the internet, and it's all over the place, they think, "Oh, he's funny," and so I want to go see what he's up to. And so I think to myself, I want to bring laughter, but I also have a depth of spirituality. I'm a Christ follower. I believe that he is, in fact, God. He's the only one that's ever proved it, or at least given a reason to think this could be legit. I mean, real legit, not pretend legit or mythologically legit. But I also try to give people insights and wisdom. There's a lot of men out there like me. They work hard. They come home. They don't know what their wife wants. They're afraid to get the wrong thing. And I thought to myself, and I really did some research. And, when I did Brad Stein Has Issues in California, the old ones before it became a podcast, they were just rants. And I found one that I really did some deep research to try to discover ways to help men, husbands especially, buy for their wife. Their wife works hard. She cleans, she dusts, she vacuums, she fixes holes in the roof, she manicures the lawn, she digs holes, she removes tree stumps. I mean, isn't that what most wives do? Well, anyways, mine does. But I expect it because I want to know that she appreciates me. And so the more labor she commits to, the more I realize this woman loves me. And it makes me feel good about myself. What? And then I can go out and do some comedy. But I really did a deep dive into, is there some techniques, some formulas that could help men shop for their wives and get them something, like you said, they don't know what to get. They want to be creative. This is something they're going to love. This is something that they can't make a mistake. So I went ahead, I put all this together. Here's what I'm going to ask you guys to do, especially the men. Women, you can go take a break. Get a pad of paper, get a pen, take these notes down, and maybe, just maybe, this will help you cut some corners as you get out maybe this weekend and buy that last minute thing for your wife. And I really want this to work for you. I want it to be a beautiful moment where she sees it and she's enthralled that you would think about her that way. How did you know? How did you know? So this is what I've done for you. So go ahead and take a few moments, and then we'll come back and talk about it. But hopefully this is a way to really help you make Christmas a special, special time for you and the wife this next week. So Wyatt, if you have that loaded up, here's my tip for the best gifts for your wife. Well, guys, Christmas is just days away, and if you're like me, you still haven't finished your shopping. Nothing is more nerve-wracking and perfect at sucking the life out of the Christmas season than the pressure of trying to figure out these last-minute perfect gifts for your wife. Well, I'm your salvation. Here are a few suggestions for presents for her that should help make Christmas Day a huge hit at your house. First, well, how about an 85-inch 4K OLED TV? Preferably Samsung, but I'm sure she's flexible. See, the great thing about 4K flat screens is they're on the wall. They're off the old conventional television nooks that made it difficult for your wife to dust around the base. No, the HD screen picture is so colorful, so intense that when it's on, well, your wife will almost mistake it for a beautiful piece of artwork hanging from a gallery. As you change channels, the picture becomes diverse, thus never leaving the chance for boredom to set in. Think Rembrandt or Chagall. Okay, here's something she would love. How about a gift certificate for a day of massage and pampering? Guys, if there is one often unspoken desire of your wife, it's to have a little more time to herself while doing housework without you hanging around and being in the way. When you take a day and head to the spa, she'll be free to clean and rearrange the furniture without the fear of you complaining that when you push the couch around, it hurts your back. The spa not only will help you get the kinks out, but it's a way to get out of her hair for once and for all, and to show her you love her. You want to splurge on her this year? How about a season ticket for 2 to your local sports team? Never again should you put her in that position of saying we never go out anymore. Season tickets are your way of saying, hey, babe, not only do I want to go out with you, but now we have the opportunity to do it over 80 times this year. Think of the tear in her eye when she realizes you didn't waste money on earrings or shoes that oftentimes can get lost, but you invested instead in a stadium full of like-minded couples, sharing the fellowship of us time. Guys, keep in mind, women think differently than us when it comes to their needs, so one classic complaint from women is, you don't really know me. Intimacy is what she's implying. Sure, season tickets will give you something to share together, but what about the intimacy of just the two of you alone, private? Something that is shared only between a husband and a wife. Fishing gear, that's the perfect solution. It allows both of you to find your very own fishing spot, where alone you can talk and bait hooks, without the kids rushing in or the telephone ringing, ruining the mood. And here's a special one, men. A personal love contract. This is my favorite because it's from the heart. It's not one of those impersonal store-bought items. As a Christian man, we're taught to love, nurture our wives. The Bible also is explicit about not denying each other our bodies because the sexual experience is from God. It's designed to demonstrate in physicality that we are one flesh. Because as men, we quickly realize when we get married that our wives' desires and frequencies in the sexual union, well, they're vastly different than ours. It's caused problems in some marriages. Well, the love contract is designed to remedy that. All it is, it's a simple contract written on a piece of paper, symbolizing your love and your desire for your bride. Make it simple, straightforward, as it indicates that every day I, as your husband, will make myself available to you physically. I will not dictate the time or place, but I'll humbly and lovingly, biblically, allow you, my wife, to choose the daily time and place so that daily we can, on a daily basis, grow in our spiritual love by demonstrating our daily physical love. This daily commitment takes the pressure off of her trying to guess when you're interested in sharing these Song of Solomon moments. You, with this simple contract, will have lovingly made it clear that the rest of your lives, the two of you, will be committed to prayerfully engaging in the joy of a daily physical union. This beautiful contract will once and for all bring her the assurance that you are thinking of her and her needs daily.
See what I mean? I mean, it's not complicated, guys. It's just if you're thinking about her, if it's all about her, then yeah, there are ways to find the answers to please your wife and giving her a gift that she can't forget, that she'll treasure. And you know what? It's a tradition, right? I mean, the tradition of buying gifts is an American tradition. You grew up with it, son. You grew up with Santa. There was something I was thinking about, though, and I wanted to ask you about this. You know, do you think there's something maybe wrong with teaching kids about Santa if you're trying to teach them about Jesus? Again, this is what this entire Christmas, Christ Mass, is about, is Jesus. And then somehow Santa weasel his way into this thing. And he's a lie. And it's fun, though, because you literally wake up. Did you wake up thinking, look, he ate my cookie?
Yes.
Oh, look, he dribbled milk everywhere.
Yeah.
Oh, look, he seems to dribble milk every time.
Oh, yeah, Mom and Dad are going to hate this dude.
And did you ever stop to think, maybe as much as I appreciate his gifts, and I'm glad he enjoyed my cookies and milk, what is wrong with this guy that he can't drink milk without spill? Isn't he an adult? What is wrong with him and his spillings? I'm 6 and I don't spill milk, and I'm not even using a sippy cup. Wyatt, did you ever consider that maybe there was something wrong with the oral functions of Santa?
Well, no. If you're a busy guy who has to visit everywhere in one night, you'd be a bit messy, too.
So you think it was just like a quick bite and a slash and off he goes?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, all right. Well, that makes sense. That makes me feel better. I don't even know why I'm feeling sad for disparaging the character of Santa, because he's not real, Wyatt. And I remember when you were 19 and you told me, I think I'm starting to not believe in Santa. And it was a big day for me. I was so sad for you, because I knew this beautiful part of your life is gone now. But I do wonder to myself, do you think there could be something weird about the magical guy and suddenly he's not real and we've been lying about it? But, this God that turned into a human that came on earth from a virgin, couldn't that make people go, well, okay, so that's also a Santa-esque story, yeah?
Well, here's the thing. If there's one universal truth about being a kid,
Yeah.
your entire childhood is nothing but being lied to. Santa, Easter Bunny, Tooth Fairy. You're special. You're the only unique person ever. It's
You're gonna grow up and be whatever you want.
Yeah, follow your dreams, they will come true. It's all a lie.
You're all gonna own your own home someday. You're gonna have a wife that loves you and never treats you badly or screams and yells at you or doesn't want a Christmas tree because she thinks it's pagan.
You will never face hardship. Everything will go out exactly as you planned.
Oh my gosh,
It's
Wyatt.
all a lie. So Santa ain't the most important thing in this discussion. There are plenty of other lies we tell kids.
So life is a giant psyop.
Life is a massive Santa is real conspiracy.
I'll be doggone. I never saw that coming. And I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. But here's something else you don't know. You're thinking about our traditions here in the United States, but have you ever stopped to think, and I hope you have. Have you ever stopped to think and ponder what do the traditions for the other countries might go through on Christmas? Maybe is it the same as ours? Do they have a fat red guy with fuzzy jacket and white and twinkly nose and ruddy cheeks? He's fat. He's huge. Probably because of him down on all them cookies and milk. But Wyatt, Japan. Have you ever been there?
I have never been outside the United States, to my knowledge.
You never went to Canada?
Nope.
Never went to Mexico?
Nah.
How about, have you ever been to the ocean?
Does the ocean count as outside the
Well, it's connected to a part of itself in Europe. So if you're not on land and you're kind of hovering, in a sense, isn't all the water one?
Sorry, I have visited international waters.
Yeah.
I don't think that counts, though.
I just was wondering. I didn't know. It's kind of like people that fly through a place and get off at Salt Lake City to catch the plane. And they say, I've been to Utah. And it's like, have you? Have you? You were at the airport. You haven't seen anything.
You basically sent a postcard from Utah.
That's
That's
exactly
about all you did.
Well, anyways, Japan is a special place. It really is. It's a beautiful little island all by itself, minding its own business, making great technology for a little island.
I mean, they need to invent all that technology if Godzilla keeps wrecking those cities.
You know what? The poor people of all the tiny, countries
cannot
that
catch a break.
can't catch a break because we could have 10 of our biggest cities trampled by Godzilla, and we got 500 more.
Yeah. They're a dime a dozen around here.
They are, and then when a flying rocket-feeded turtle decides to go attack and fight and defend Japan against Godzilla, well, he ends up wiping everything out too. So even the good guy does more destruction. I wonder if the Japanese are saying, "Hey, nah, let him do a couple tramples." But when you get into the fight, it destroys it all.
Well, I mean, think about it. When aliens invade, they always go after the America.
Yeah.
But when giant monsters attack, where do they go? Japan.
They deserve it,
Every country has their own natural disaster they can call their own.
Well, I'll tell you.
Except Ecuador. Because they think they're better than us or something.
Yes, you know why? Because they're equal. They're on the equator. They're on the equator.
They all?
Ecuador.
Oh.
Equator.
So is the equator named after Ecuador or vice versa?
It was named. Ecuador was the first country that ever existed.
Oh, really? The first one?
Yeah, before there was an Earth, there was Ecuador, and then Earth formed around it, and it happened to go right around the girdle.
Oh, yeah. That's why it's a bit lopsided.
That's right.
Yeah, that
That's
makes
right.
sense.
Well, anyways, I was at Ecuador once, and I sponsored a kid from World Vision there. Or I'm sorry, from Compassion International. I used to do World Vision, but now I've been working with Compassion for many, many, many years. And I sponsored a child there, and when I did that, I was in Ecuador, and there was an area in Ecuador where you could, like, there's a compass on your phone, and if you stood on this one spot in Ecuador, it was 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. There was no north, south, east, west configuration. It was zeros, which is the only place in the world you can do it, is on the equator. So I did that, and I took a screenshot of it and whatnot because, who knows if I'm ever going to be back in Ecuador. But what does that have to do with Japan? And the answer is nothing.
Nothing.
We just got sidetracked, and we suddenly realized I would start reeling it in going, why am I talking about Ecuador?
Audience, to give you a taste of what you missed when the recording got corrupted, man, did we get sidetracked there too? Some things just never change.
It's all right though. It's a sidetrack. Sometimes it ends up being in Oz. Sometimes there's munchkins.
Look, sometimes the sidetrack is just a roundabout way of saying the main track.
That's what I mean. That's what I was getting at. Well, Japan has a very special celebration for Christmas. They do it on Christmas Eve, and it came from I believe in the 80s. There was a campaign from Kentucky Fried Chicken who did a campaign. And they said the campaign was basically make Christmas more Kentucky, something like that. Put a Kentucky.
So hold on. They had Mick hats instead of MAGA hats. Make Christmas Kentucky.
Yeah. Mecca.
Yeah.
Make
Mecca.
Christmas. Yeah.
We should make hats of that.
Yes.
I'm sure they will sell.
Okay. Well, nevertheless, Kentucky Fried did it, and they went out on Christmas Eve and got themselves a big old bucket of Kentucky Fried Chicken. Well, here's the thing. It's become a tradition that on Christmas Eve, it's not a real religious, I think they have, I think it's, what's it called? Shao. I can't think of their religious order there. But anyways, they're not big religious. They're not big Christmassy, but they do go and get Kentucky Fried Chicken. I used to love Kentucky Fried Chicken. I remember for picnics, we'd have those buckets, and they'd be greasy and good. It's called finger licking good. That was their motto, because when you'd eat it, you would just have to lick the good. You were licking grease.
Yeah.
But it was so good, so good, so good. It sucks now.
Yet now it's finger looking good because once you take a bite, you want to eat your own fingers.
It's at least there'd be some meat there, because there's no meat. It's like all crumbly fried batter, and there's no meat. I'm telling you, and I'm not saying this to disparage these folks. Bring back real chicken, please. Bring back big old drumsticks. I mean, think about the uniqueness of the drumstick, the only food that comes with its own handle. That should have been your marketing scheme, and yet you've gone cheap. I don't know if you found miniature chickens. I don't know if you found chickens that are anorexic. You've ruined the experience.
I mean, come on, people. Chick-fil-A, stinking Walmart probably has chicken.
Costco and it's
Yeah, they have whole rotisserie chickens for less money than it takes to get a 4-pack at KFC.
have you been to KFC lately and eaten it?
No,
and said
I
this?
have not been to KFC in my recent memory.
Why have I told you about the Ukraine?
The Ukraines? Oh, yeah, I learned all about the Ukraines.
Well, let me tell you something about the Ukraine.
about
Ukraine,
the
of course,
Uscranes?
is a country that is
all about you.
suffering from Russia's invasion, and yet they celebrate Christmas too. And one of their traditions.
Wait, they got the sequel? They got Christmas 2?
They do.
We only have Christmas 1.
Well, I know, but this is the good one, where this time the bad guys really fall even more dramatically on their backs under ice.
Oh, well, no. Christmas 2 was light a rope on fire as they're climbing down it, and somehow they survive. Those movies really do.
What's the name of those?
Home Alone.
Home Alone.
Those movies really like walk the line between fun little Christmas movie with slapstick comedy, and this is just watching two guys get tortured by a kid.
Wyatt, did you know that they now stuntmen have a term? I think they call it a Home Alone. When they ask them to do a fall, so you want me to do a Home Alone? That kind of flippery straight up and then slam down cartoon version of falls was so exaggerated and unusual that it kind of became an industry standard. This is what you call this type of falls, like a Home Alone, because it's crazy. It's like a cartoon.
Yeah, I mean, hey, that movie, say what you will about the sequels, but that original movie is probably a Christmas classic at this point.
It really, really is. Not like, It's a Wonderful Life, but it's up there. It's a funny one. It's not like Die Hard, a beautiful tearjerker.
Die Hard is not a Christmas movie. It takes place at Christmas. That is not the same thing.
But
where's the wreath, Brad?
Well, didn't they put a wreath on the bad guy after he died at his funeral? Probably there was a wreath.
Oh, I thought you meant like around the neck, like in the casket.
Yes, I'm just saying. You put wreaths on caskets.
Like the main character, just like a final, I showed you.
Ukraine has this tradition. They have, when they put up their decorations, and we do, and when you think of Christmas decorations, what do you think of?
Oh, I think of lights and Christmas trees and mistletoe.
Wreaths?
Wreaths.
Colorful lights. Remember, we only do C9s. We don't do the white lights. We do the old, colorful, beautiful, old school 60s.
24/7 marathons of It's a Wonderful Life.
Nativity scenes, Santas.
Candy cane, Santa.
Okay, we think that's Christmas. You could see that, it's Christmas. Well, they have...
Leaving your tree up until July. That's a good one.
They have one, too. They have a very specific abundance of a particular type of item.
Potato.
No. Oh. It would sound like that because it's next to Russia, and they love their rutabagas, right, and their turnips.
And the vodka.
And their vodka. Yes. And they can make vodka out of apparently anything.
But, I mean, sky's the limit, man.
It really is. But their item is a cobweb.
Oh my God. I actually forgot about that from the last time we did this.
Cobweb.
I forgot. Why a cobweb? I don't get it.
I don't know.
If you're going to pick a spider web, at least use one that's still occupied.
They have cobwebs for their decoration for Christmas. They see cobwebs and go, it's Christmas. It's Christmas.
Are they like the fake, like cotton sort of cobwebs they use in Halloween?
I think it's like, like solid thing, and that it's maybe a string, so it's really visible.
But why?
I didn't ask them. I'm not Ukrainian, Wyatt. You know that.
That doesn't mean you can't ask them, hey, why are you doing this weird thing that nobody else does?
Wyatt, I got to ask you something.
Yes?
Have you ever heard of kettling? Catalan.
I heard of it now.
Okay, it's an island. I think it's an island. Could just be
An island?
I think, or maybe
They
a
don't
country.
celebrate Christmas on islands. It's always tropical or
Yeah.
something.
Well, anyways, I got to tell you about their. I got to tell you about their tradition. They have their tradition. They create something. They make something.
Okay.
It's called a Catalan cagaccio. Cagaccio. Okay.
Uh-huh.
And what it is, it's a log
Okay.
that's hollowed, and they fill it with goodies, nuts, candies, fruit,
Yeah, so like a stocking, basically.
like a stocking,
Yeah.
but they put a hat on it, eyes, so they make basic. It's kind of like Plank from Ed, Ed and Eddie, except for it's a log. It's filled with these things with the hat and the eye. And then they beat it
like a
like a pinata.
like a pinata.
And they want the items to fall out, and when they finally do, they can eat them. And they call it Catalan cagaccio, which means defecating log. They want the log to poop out the treats.
Imagine if pinatas in America were the same way.
And then they decorate nativity scenes with little small pooping figurines. So they would have their...
No.
Yeah.
Because I looked this up. Okay, I looked this up last time.
Yeah.
The log thing is real. I do not believe that other part.
They have their pants down by their ankles, and
No.
they have little poopy figurines around their nativity.
No,
Wyatt,
no,
where
you're
is this?
messing with me. There's no possible, conceivable way that that's a thing.
Well, it's something about it's and there's nothing wrong with it. I know a lot of Christians watch the show. People don't want. I didn't use any bad language. People do poop. It is something God created.
Yes, but you don't celebrate it.
They do. That's
Why?
they want the defecating log. I don't know, but that's them. And should we judge them, son? Seriously?
Yes, we absolutely should. Out of every country in the world, that is the one we are allowed to judge.
So the defecating log to you is not something that's going to catch on then here in the West.
You know what? I don't think so.
Okay, all right. I was just giving it as an option, something to mix up Christmas a little bit, make it a little bit more festive, a little bit more interesting. But I don't want to make your festivities any less festive. So we'll abandon that. But I wanted to give it as I wanted to throw it out there, roll the dice.
I'm just asking. I gotta meet the guy who managed to convince an entire country that defecating nativity scenes were all the rage.
Well, in this one tiny little place, which is only there because Godzilla wasn't aware of it, they came up with that, and nobody stops them on it. Nobody visits. It's not a big tourist attraction either.
I can only imagine why.
Well, anyways, should we mock other people's special? We're the ones that
Yes.
have the fat Santa and think that's the fat Santa.
He's not fat. He's jolly.
Okay. Let's appease the fat lobby out there that is saying.
Santa is the only exception. All else are obese.
All right. Well, anyways, I just
Hit the gym, fatty.
look.
Unless you want to take over old Saint Nick's job.
Listen, I feel like if there is somebody of girth watching, they'll laugh because
Somebody of girth.
yeah.
Is that what they're calling themselves
I
now?
was trying to be sensitive.
Really?
I don't know.
Why not call them plus-sized?
Yeah, or full figured.
Or big boned. You can't forget big boned.
I wouldn't forget that. Hefty.
Hefty. Oh,
Husky.
Hefty.
Husky, right?
Husky's a good one.
Wyatt, here's the thing. I'm 5'6". I'm super short. So the deal is, if somebody joked about me being short, I wouldn't even get mad because it's true. And so,
Well, I mean, look-
but I believe if I can take a joke about short, then why I should be able to joke about it. Matter of fact, I did a joke about this, about Christmas. Did you know that, about fat and shorts and the difference
Yeah.
between
Oh,
fat?
yeah, I know
Matter of fact, maybe next week we'll show a clip
Yeah.
of that since it's going to be the week before actual Christmas where people now know what to get for their wives. But Wyatt, I got to tell you something. I was wondering about the idea that maybe needs to be talked about just for a second before we go to our guests. Because you know what, son? Everybody that I know, especially Christians, they always say, Christmas is too commercialized. Okay? And we all agree. It's all about Jesus. That's really the reason for the season. All the little bumper sticker phrases. But in the end, nobody oftentimes does anything different. Excuse me. And so I think to myself, what if you did decide today, if you're a Christ follower, that when you go to the mall, that you are the guy that as everybody's trying to get into the parking space, you're the one that says, you know what? After me. You get in line and you see somebody with their gifts and you say, can I help you with that? You see somebody that maybe seems a little dejected, or the elderly guy sitting by himself, and maybe he just wants to be around people because his wife's no longer there. And you sit down and you just, you're kind to him. Ask if you can pray for him. In other words, maybe we shouldn't talk about being Christness, and that's what I use, not kindness, Christness. But maybe we should actually do it. Maybe we should really, this time, for this Christmas season, actually make it about Christ. Maybe we should not emphasize Santa, but a nativity scene, or a star, or I don't know, perhaps, I'm trying to think of even a cross for that matter, or an ichthys. Maybe we should make it more about that. Still have the beautiful lights, because lights to me talk about the light of Christ. He is the light of the world. Maybe it should have music, hymns, Christmas hymns, but maybe it should be a time where we actually decide, hey man, let's make it about Jesus. We have a new administration coming in here in 20 days or something, and they act like they're going to change this nation and bring it back to prosperity and freedom and First Amendment rights and everything else that we all just can't even imagine and can't believe is happening. But the people want it. And I believe the church needs to make sure from this day forward that they start teaching classic theological Christian doctrine. They need to create the moral structure so at least God sees we aren't playing games anymore. There is a male and a female in a way that they're supposed to interact. There is a family in the way they're supposed to interact. There is a way that God has ordained the world. And we are the ones that have to tell people what that means, what that looks like. But I will tell you this, seriously, people need less people talking about Jesus and people actually being Jesus. And I'm just as guilty, but I'm kind of throwing this out there to say, I'm going to do it too. I'm going to be aware. I'm going to be sensitive. Learning to let others be the focus and giving them special opportunities and lines. Or I'm just saying, it's a discipline. That's why being disciples so rare, because it's a discipline and people don't want to be disciplined. But what if we did? What if we decided this is in fact a time where I want people to, when around me, wherever I go, and it's Christmas time, there's something about me that they say, this guy has something that I'm interested in, that somehow we make it a volitive act to identify as Christians. And this is our holiday that everybody celebrates, including non-believers, right? Let's let them know what this really is about. Let's let them know. There's a man that I talked to who was from England, and I saw him at an Oxford debate, and he got thrown out of his church and everything because he was talking about classic Christian doctrine. And the man had to move from England, from Europe, which he believes is lost. And he came to the United States, and they gave him a parish in Michigan. And he loves this nation. He sees and knew that without the freedom of this nation, nothing else is going to make it. We're the most powerful nation on earth still, and we have to set the groundwork for returning to our Christian heritage and our faith and bringing that to the world again without apology and without compromise. And I got to talk to him, and he was somebody I saw, and suddenly I'm speaking to him, and it was wonderful. And I hope it's a gift to you to say, here's people that's appreciating what happens when even a Western nation is, its Christianity is removed, and you're left with nothing. What's at stake? What really happens? He lived it, and he's here now. And so I thought it's perfect for the week before the week before Christmas, to talk to somebody. What is at stake, and what maybe God has gifted us with this next administration? That we pray for Donald Trump's salvation, we pray for his cabinet salvation, we pray for DC to have a third great awakening and a revival. Why don't we make Christmas seriously about Jesus? Seriously. Go look around your decorations and replace the Santas, and let's put Jesus in there. Let's live this thing like we mean it. Let's really do Christ Mass this year. And with that in mind, I hope that you guys will come back next week and the next couple weeks, because very soon it's going to be the 2025. And I'm hoping to have a kind of a new launch of Bradstein Has Issues with some new changes to the set. And we will be turning the silver camera around, the first one we ever had that Larry Gilbert got us. So Wyatt will be seen as well as heard when he talks. I think he deserves to be on air. He's a great sidekick. He's learning more and more production. As a matter of fact, the guy that you're about to see an interview with, it was Wyatt's editing. It's his first chance at editing. He's going to be doing it full time. And I want you to see what we are doing. And we've got some guests coming up. I'm telling you, you're not going to believe the guests we have coming up. I can't believe it, but they are coming. And I need your support. And of course, as the year flips, you're going to renew your Militia of the Mind. Well, that doesn't have to be renewed, but if you are one of the mighty 10,000, that'll be automatically renewed, so you can have another year of being part of it, getting the special guest interviews, getting access to my comedy. And if you're one of the elite, of course, you'll be able to own the comedy as well. But folks, we want this thing to be great, and you are the people that made it happen. And so I'm very excited to spend this time, and with Christmas coming up next week, with you, my fans who literally helped make it occur. So I really believe you're going to enjoy this guest. It was a fun interview, and it's poignant, and it's a perfect time for us to not forget the amazing gift of Christ and freedom in this nation. So folks, enjoy. See you next Monday. This conversation with God's Comic Brad Stein and Father Calvin Robinson. Please welcome Father Calvin Robinson. How do you do, sir?
Hello, Brad. I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
You know what? I guess I'm okay.
You guess?
Well, you know what? I mean, what does that even mean? How are we, right? I mean, I don't know. We're living in a world where the crazies have taken over. The clowns are running the show. But I think it's easy to joke and laugh about what's going on, because what else can you do? It's so absurd.
Yeah.
But I think what has been most disconcerting to me, Father, is that how I should reference you, Father?
That's fine. Yeah.
Okay. Is what happens when a culture abandons reality.
Yeah.
I don't know what you do with that, because you have no navigating place anymore, because there's the compass is irrelevant if there's no north or south. It doesn't matter. It creates chaos and then demands people find some continuity in that. I don't know how you do it. So tell me, if you wouldn't mind, just a bit of your background, because what most fascinated about me when you were speaking, and forgive me if I misrepresented where I saw you. You've been a lot of places I've seen you, but it seems like it was in like in Parliament or something you were making. Can you maybe help me with that so I don't look completely like an idiot?
Yeah, of course I can. But firstly, your point that you're making is spot on. We are living in crazy, crazy times where there is no north and south on the compass. But we, and I mean we Christians, have that moral compass because it's been handed to us through revelation. We have sacred scripture, we have sacred tradition, we know what's good and what's not good because God has revealed that to us. So it's almost a blessing that we are around in these crazy times, because it's our duty and our obligation to keep the sanity. We are here to shine a light in this ever-darkening world around us. We are here to be the salt in this crazy, crazy environment that we're living through. And so we can get kind of saddened and depressed and think, oh, things were so much better 100 years ago when everyone was Christian and everyone knew the truth. But actually, we are called to be in such a time as this. So this is our blessing. This is our journey. And of course, comedy as well is one of the greatest methods of communication. You are able to speak the truth in a way that others can't. When I say something, I get booed out, I get kicked out of the country. When you say something, people laugh, and then later on they'll be like, oh, actually, what he said was true. So there's a real gift in that, and I think that's very important. But to answer your question on where was I, it was the Oxford Union, I believe, the one that you saw me speaking at. This is an ancient tradition from back in the day when actually there was no such thing as free speech. We could argue whether there even is today in England. And the Oxford Union was set up to have these debates, mostly actually at the time on theology. And this is back when Oxford was, well, I mean, all the main universities were set up by the church. And of course, to begin with, they only offered theology, and then they offered other courses once you had your degree in theology. So it was we knew at one stage that to understand God's creation, you had to understand God, or at least to some degree, that we understood that theology is the pathway to everything. And of course, these days it's a side route and kind of disregarded as non-essential in this secular world, but it is important. And so the Oxford Union was set up for these conversations. And it's a long tradition of adhering to free speech and having these crazy debates and seeing where they go. Now, the debate that I was a part of was, this house believes in same-sex marriage in the church. And of course, I was on the opposing side, Brad, because I'm a Christian. Unfortunately, there were some people who thought they were Christians on the other side saying that there should be such a thing as same-sex marriage, which goes against Christian teaching. It's insane. But what was interesting about the debate is that before it happened, the chairman stood up and said, we've received letters of complaints about this topic of conversation, and people are saying we should not even be having this debate. Now, thankfully, the chairman of the society said, but it's our job, it's my duty, he said, as the chairman of the Oxford Union, to have these debates, whether people like them or not, because that's the whole point of having debates. And so thankfully, there are still some people who do believe in free speech, but it seems people in the audience, or some of them, were complaining before the fact to try and prevent the conversation from being had in the first place.
Well, so talk to me about the history in England. I guess you're from England originally. I mean, is that where you're born?
Yes, born and bred.
Okay.
In the Midlands, a stone's throw from Sherwood Forest, Robin Hood country.
Well done. Okay. I see. I thought that was like a fable or a fairy tale. I didn't know it was real. So it's good to know that maybe he's William Tell, or who was out there? Was it William Tell or was it Robin Hood? One of those two is out there still gallivanting around, stealing from the rich. So I have a disadvantage in that I was born in the United States of America. This was my fishbowl, so to speak. This was the water that I inhabited. So I don't know how to think differently than knowing that I always had the First Amendment to undergird my right to speech, that it was sacrosanct, that it was established, it was a foundation, it was immutable. And it came from God, by the way. The founders, thank goodness, reference that our rights aren't given by the government, they're given by God, thus they can't be taken from the government because they didn't give it in the first place. So that's very inculcated in my DNA. I don't know how to think differently than an American because that's all I know. I believe in the American dream. I believe in American ingenuity. Does that mean that nobody else had ingenuity? But obviously, no. There's many older cultures than mine. But that kind of hubris, maybe, that was sort of oddly connected to the American experiment, that you could be anything, you could get anywhere you wanted, but you need to have the freedom to do that without fear of reprisal. I think gives people, unleashes them to boundaries that maybe others might have to feel constrained to because they've learned that they get in trouble for saying certain things. But I came from England, right? The Puritans came from England to escape religious persecution. And you all had the Magna Carta. And the Magna Carta, I think, is kind of the first document to say, you know, King, you even have to bow the knee a few times. So it really was unprecedented. So can you kind of give us a little understanding if that is even in your grid? I don't know if Englanders grow up thinking and proud of that, but wasn't that kind of one of the first human rights edicts that was established to let the monarchy know that they too don't get to rule as despots, that they have to bow the knee to a higher power?
Absolutely. I think it had always been that way. I think from the foundation of our country, which is over 1,000 years old at this point, we understood that the divine right of kings didn't mean that the king had a divine right over the people, but that the king had a divine right to serve God and to serve the people. And we understood this role of servant leadership for the longest time. And of course, people being sinners and fallen, broken people sway to and fro and do things right or do things wrong. And we had good kings and we had bad kings. And unfortunately, went through the English Civil War, where we had a period of government versus monarchy. And after that, we came out stronger because we came out reasserting the fact that the king is a servant first and foremost, not a ruler, and that as subjects, he has a responsibility and a duty and an obligation to his people, but also he is accountable to God. And I honestly believe we've managed to maintain that to some degree. Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, God rest her soul, was a wonderful example of this, that she always believed that she was accountable to God and that she had to serve her people well, because on Judgment Day, she will be judged accordingly. We can argue about whether her son believes the same or not, but the fact of the matter is that all of this came through culture, and England is such an old country that lots of things have evolved. So yes, the Magna Carta was one of the first codified bits of our kind of constitution, if you like, so, much like the English Bill of Rights, which is no longer adhered to because we ditched all of that when we joined the EU. We took on board the European Court of Human Rights and the European Convention of Human Rights. But the point I'm making is that in England, everything evolved over time. And so we took for granted these things. And we always said, well, they don't need to be codified because we know who we are. We know an Englishman's castle is his home, or the other way around, rather. We knew that we had common law and that we had a freedom, a God-given freedom.
But where? How did you know? In other words, who
Because that was
crafted the
in our
Magna?
DNA, because we didn't have to write it down. We knew it because we passed that on through our culture, through our heritage, that an Englishman's home is his castle. And actually, we are free to live on the land because we're a part of the land, and the land is Great Britain is us, and we are Britain. However, when you take things like that for granted, eventually they get corrupted because people corrupt, and absolute power corrupts people absolutely. And then we have these despots who want to take hold of power that isn't necessarily theirs. And so then what happened with the American experiment is that when people left England and fought that good fight, they thought these things need to be codified. And thankfully, your Constitution and your Bill of Rights and your Pledge of Allegiance and all these documents, these foundational documents that this very new country has, is because they saw what was going on in the homeland and thought, well, unless we explicitly write down what it means to be a free man, eventually that could be taken away from us. And so it was inherited from United Kingdom, but then codified in a way that, thank God it was, because your First and your Second Amendment in particular will make you free in this country. And one of the reasons I'm here.
In the Magna Carta, who wrote the Magna Carta?
Well, I think it was a collaboration, but there were certain people that would take credit for it. But the king instituted it for a purpose of making sure that the king and Parliament and their relationship would never crumble again, and that we all knew where we stood.
So the king himself basically codified a removal of some of his authority. I mean, that's fairly, I don't even know what the word would be. That's a fairly humble way to behave. That because one thing we've learned about history is, you give power to someone, they're not giving it back. You'll have to take it back. And so if the king is willingly relinquishing some of his power, something must have driven him. That I'm not trying to belabor the Magna Carta, but it's just such a magnificent document, and it did kind of start, or at least a huge participant in how the West sees
human rights and individual freedoms and agency. All, of course, is Judeo-Christian, but I was just curious if maybe the church was involved, because it is a Judeo-Christian concept, right? And so I wondered where, if it was a hybridization of the monarchy and he got with the church to find some solidarity. I just don't know enough about it, I guess.
Well, I mean, it's an interesting period of history, but a lot of these things all meet together to form a fork in the roads. And you've got to remember that Oliver Cromwell, essentially a parliamentarian, took over the country and became a de facto monarch because he beheaded King Charles and took power away from the sovereign. He didn't have the power or the authority to do that, but he said he was doing it on behalf of the people. But then as soon as he'd taken the king's power away, he kind of assumed it for himself, which is what people always tend to do, right? And this is how we end up with tyrants. So when we got our monarch back, what we said is we have to protect the monarchy, but also protect Parliament and also protect the people. And this is why the English Constitution is a constitutional monarchy, in that the monarch is the sovereign, but they don't have any real authority other than to be a check and balance against parliamentary democracy. And that means that the king is the head of the military, head of judiciary, head of the legislative, but cannot actually enact anything by themselves, which what that does is it makes the king, as the head of all those things, a symbol, so that no parliamentarian can become the head of the military and effect a coup, or become the head of the judiciary and change the law, or the head of the legislative and do the same. So it's a system that seems to have actually worked for the most part. Whereas if you look at other systems like republics, I don't know if republics are the best option, because it essentially means that the president gains more and more power, and it's essentially the president becomes a monarch in and of himself, outside of the outside of the constitutional power that is given to him. Does Congress act as a check and balance to the president in the way it was supposed to about when it was all set out? I don't know.
No, I'll help you. No is the answer to that particular question. And it's sad because that was the point, is they literally were looking at human nature again, because they had a Christian worldview. They understood we're inherently sinners, that we're inherently power hungry. That's why he said the original, the most hated sin is pride, because all sin comes from pride. Every sin is about a systemic narcissism that believes you're God and you get to choose who gets to live, die. If you have something I want, I desire it. I mean, that's all pride driven. It's all Satan. It's the original sin. But if you don't have that understanding, if you don't have that perspective, you're going to have a presupposition that's going to create a law or a behavioral expectation of your citizenry that's going to be different. It just is. It's going to be based on what is the foundation for how you see the world. And that's why, when I saw you with in Oxford, it was like this controversial moment. Like you said, I think there were those who perhaps were protesting just the fact that you were even had the audacity to breach the subject, or at least to have a dissent. And forget free speech, even though that's essential and crucial. Theoretically, you were being attacked for being a classical, theologically historical Christian. That's it. You weren't doing anything radical. You weren't taking digging your heels in like I've just decided to be dogmatic for the sake of dogmatism, or I'm trying to control the citizenry by putting my theocracy. You just said, here's what has been taught for 2,000 years, and I'm a Christian, so I'm going to live like this. I didn't write the Bible. I just read it. It's what it said. So I think that's what is just so telling, Father Robinson, is that just to believe the Bible is too dangerous for those who have absolutely decided we're going to rule the world. And Christianity has always been the greatest threat. I mean, it's why Marxism, and it cannot survive without eliminating the church and God, because the state is God. And if I'm not going to bow the knee to, if I bow to God, then that trumps the state. So you left England. Now you're in Michigan. So one wonders how you ended up, there's 50, I don't know if you knew that. We have 50 states.
You chose Michigan. So can you tell me a little bit about what brought you to that particular part of this nation?
Yeah, I didn't choose Michigan at all. Michigan chose me. God said, "You're going to Michigan." So,
Really? Well, I apologize for
no, no,
that.
not at all.
Uh,
Um, I spent a lot of time in the States, in particular down in the Bible Belt, Texas and Alabama. I've got many good friends down there, very sound people. It's very comfortable for me down there. But God said, "You're not supposed to be comfortable. You're supposed to be where there is still some fight." And I got called to a parish church out here, wonderful, faithful community in the heart of it. And this is where I'm serving now. And I think it's good because England is lost, Europe is lost, but America isn't. But there's still lots of battles being had in America. America, I keep saying America will be the last stand for the West, for Christendom. If America falls, that's it. The West is done. Uh,
Certainly.
Absolutely. But there are battlegrounds. Michigan is one of those battlegrounds.
Mm.
So I am a fighter. I'm a Christian soldier. I've been called to fight here. And it's funny because many people thought I was running away from England. If I was running away from England, I would be living very comfortably in Texas or Alabama right now, surrounded by sound people, just living an easy life. But we're not called to live easy lives. Christianity is not an easy life to live,
No.
especially we are radical. It is a radical faith. And this is why
Yes.
people want to silence us and silence the faith, because they hate the truth. The enemy hates the truth. And you are absolutely right when you said that, people who want power must destroy the church first, because if we are subservient to God first and foremost, we cannot be subservient to them. And they want us to take the knee to them, whether it's Black Lives Matter or Kamala Harris, whether it's a communist government or a communist idea, it doesn't matter. They want you to serve them. And the truth of the matter is we serve God. And that's what's so dangerous to them.
Okay, so you said you were called. So did they like reach out to you and say, "Hey, would you come here?" Or I don't know how it works. Or does the church have an internal sort of database of people looking for priests, perhaps, and then they say, "Would you be interested?" And you say yes or no, or does somebody literally pick you out and say, "Man, I've seen what you're about. We sure could use you over here." I mean, how do they find you?
Well, there are lots of things happening all at once. So I got fired from my TV show. A few days later, I got ordained to the priesthood. So there's clearly God's hand working these things. He permitted the firing of my broadcast television show at the same time I was just about to be ordained to the priesthood, which clearly shows me that's a reordering of priorities. And then I get contacted by this parish out here in Grand Rapids, West Michigan, a place I'd never even heard of. Right, I've spent so much time in the United States, but hardly any time in the Midwest. And they said, "We're looking for a priest. We think you might be him." And I was like, "Well, thank you, but I don't know anything about Michigan." And they said, "Come and visit." And I came and visited and fell in love with the people and the place. And the rest was a lot of back and forth and prayer and discernment and working out if this is where God wanted me or not. And every single place I went, every group of people I spoke to from that point on was Michigan, Michigan, Michigan. God was clearly speaking that this is where I was supposed to be. I have no idea why yet.
Right.
It's a lovely place to serve, lovely
Well, I
people.
was born in Indiana, so right
Not too
right
far.
below you guys.
Yeah.
Lived in California most of my life, and now I'm in
Oh, I'm
Nashville,
sorry.
Tennessee. Well, I there was a time when it actually had wheels that functioned, as opposed to had gone sideways. But
The days before Governor Haircare. Yeah.
that's right.
Do you
I
miss the
used
California that was?
Yeah, well, yeah, I fled 23 years ago to Nashville, Tennessee, and I saw kind of the writing on the wall. But here's the deal: it's a good object lesson in the consequences of ideas,
Oh, yeah.
because I've been in all 50 states, and if somebody put a gun to my head and said, "Pound for pound, what's the best state in the United States?" I mean, if you put all the pieces together, what every state offers in one state, what would you say is the best? And reluctantly, but with all due respect, there is no state like California. It's
Wow.
one of a kind. It has geographical eclecticism that is really kind of one of a kind. They have the redwoods.
Mm.
Unlike I think anywhere else in the world, you want a desert, we got a desert. Oh, you want the ocean? entire coastlines, Pacific Ocean. Oh, you want to go skiing? We got mountains, so you can go ski. Oh, you want wine? We've got a wine country up here. Oh, you want cosmopolitan interaction with folks? We've got the Bay Area in San Francisco. Oh, you want Hollywood? It's one of a kind with the Grauman's Chinese Theater. Well, that's how it's only one place. It's right here in the LA County. Oh, you want the best temperate weather all day long, all year long? Go down into Southern California, San Diego. Oh, you want to go into Mexico? You can pop right in. Oh, you want farmland like Michigan? You like that? Go into Bakersfield, go up into Reading. It's all in this one. Brother, you have to be uniquely designed incompetent to screw up California. You have to have reached levels of incompetence that heretofore we didn't think were possible to mess up California. I mean, the industry that it has available, it can almost be its own country, frankly. But it shows what happens when leftism runs the show. It destroys every stinking thing it touches. I mean, there's so much to talk about because I really appreciate your intellect, but most importantly, how you integrate your faith with these problems, because if we believe that our faith is true and Jesus dimensionalized himself as God, so we're dealing with a story unlike any in human history, the greatest story that could exist, then we have answers, but they're not obviously easily grasped because people are what we are watching in the abandonment of objective reality. I don't know if there's any other way to assess this phenomenon outside of it is a demonic spiritual clouding of rationale and reason, all given by God, the only God I know of that said, let's reason together. So he gave us access to his thoughts through our own logic and reason, obviously not to his superiority, but nevertheless within our own little dimension. It's so irrational. It is so beyond common sense. And even when you use logic to defend your perspective against the leftist, progressive, Marxist, postmodern nonsense, they can't beat you with the argument. They can't beat you with logic. So they simply say, how about we make logic racist? How about we make math racist? When you are tearing down the foundations that have accessed reality and drawn conclusions that have proven to be true, and you're a father, so you have a much closer relationship to God than me. That seems like a unique, almost undefinable pathogen that I don't know if there's a precedent for this in world history. Am I taking this too far? But it seems unique.
I don't know if it's unique, but it's certainly significant. I think this is the same battle that's been going on since the beginning of time. This is the battle between good and evil, and we're seeing it played out. It seems more obvious now to those who have eyes to see and ears to hear, but it's been going on underneath the surface for all eternity, bubbling away. Well, not all eternity, but beginning of time. The devil is confident. The devil is cocky, actually. The devil is arrogant, and he's overplaying his hand. And those of us who are aware of God's presence are tuning in. And I think actually, as we see more and more evil in the world, more people are waking up to the fact that if there's so much evil, there has to be an opposite. There has to be good too. And I think people are finding God through exposure to too much wickedness, which can only be a good thing. But of course, things are going to get worse. This is the first time in modern history that we're seeing a downward trajectory, really, of the Christian faith. You know, we talk about the West or Christendom, which was pretty much the majority of the world for a long time, where most people believed and knew in Jesus Christ. And now, you know, in England, for example, this is the first time in our history that atheists are the majority and Christians are now receding into a minority. But it's the same all across the West, in that the faith is seen as old-fashioned or bigoted or transphobic or whatever, and new ideas are taking hold. But that means that the new faith of woke or whatever you want to call it, neo-Marxism, is intolerant to the Christian faith, intolerant to the old faith. And so we're seeing persecution growing in the West. But again, it's fine because we know that the Christian faith thrives under persecution. And so the more they persecute us, the more we grow in faith. We may not grow in numbers necessarily, but we'll grow in faith. That connection to God that you speak about is in all of us. because we're all born with an inherent knowledge of him. He imprints knowledge of him on our hearts, in our souls. So we're all aware of that, but many people spend their whole lives running away from that fact. But the more that connection to God is pressured and stomped out and oppressed, the more that we seek him. So they can come at us. They can come at us with all they've got. But at the end of the day, we know God wins. And so we want to be on his side.
It seems as though when Jesus references what is expected to follow him, that's been glossed over in the West, at least for a long time. The way we were asked to come to his feet was done very superficially, it seems to me. I don't know how they did it in England, but when I was growing up, it was you're at some youth event or you're at a Sunday school or whatever, or church, and they give a gospel presentation, and then they say, okay, well, if everybody would just please bow your head, close your eyes, just pray, but bow your head and close your eyes. And, if this has really affected you and you'd like to accept Jesus as your savior, just raise your hand, just raise your hand slightly so I can see you. I can pray for you. Don't worry. Everybody's heads bowed. Everybody's eyes are closed because, and this is the telling statement, we don't want to embarrass you. I just told you that the living God who created all things gave us free agency, gave us the right to walk away from him. He so desperately wanted you to have access to him by volition and not by a bayonet. And then when we went sideways, he could have just said, well, I'm going to make a new batch until this pans out. He made one batch and said, nope, I'm in it for the long haul with you guys. Now, you've screwed up. I can't fix this and you can't fix this. So I will have to do the hard work for you. I will dimensionalize myself so that you will see me. I will have access. You'll have access to see where I'm coming from, a prophetic line to prove that I am not in linear time. That's proving that this is transcendent. I will do miraculous things to prove I have power over the material world, and to show that I'm not a cult because I'm doing impossible things. I will die and rise again to prove that I have power over the ultimate thing that frightens all people, death. But I've conquered that. I've paid the price for you. You have nothing to fear. I've given you the key out of the kingdom. I'm not sending you to hell. You are already heading there. All I'm doing is giving you a way out. If you go to hell, you've chosen it because I'm giving you the way out. And I'm going to pay the price. And all I ask you to do is to humble yourself and come to me. And I'm giving you everything. And you deserve none of it. And you're telling me that you would say to somebody, so if you want that, don't want to embarrass you. Everybody keep your head, because I don't want anybody to know. If you can't stand up with eyes wide open, head wide up, alone, and say, I don't care what anybody else does, I need that. And I'll stand alone. You don't deserve Jesus because you're not going to be able to handle this. If you can't do it amongst your own, what are you going to do when you walk out there? Now, I feel like this myopic, shallow Christianity is a big reason why the West has lost so much of its powerful foundation, because it never cost us anything. There was never anything at stake, but we were never called to be Christians. We were called to be disciples. And that's hard. Christian's easy. I accept Christ as my savior. You're in. Now, for the rest of your life, work it out with fear and trembling. This has got to be the hard part. So I wonder to myself, when Jesus said it's a narrow gate, many are called and few are chosen, and count the cost before you come in. And don't forget, you will be crucified. And don't forget that one of the ways you'll know that you're mine is they'll hate you, as opposed to, I will make everybody love me to show how nice Jesus is. So do you think that the numbers that we have always looked at to indicate that our faith had some substance, because we were the number one, was a little misinforming anyways, because the numbers was never what made Christianity robust. It was about who actually believed and how they behaved?
Yes, to some degree. It was the cultural norms, especially as in my homeland. Everyone was always English. Everyone English was always Christian. It was just a part of the culture, part of the, growing up, you just assume that you're English, sorry, you're Christian. You go to the local parish church, which was the Church of England for the most part, and yeah, it's part of life. But what did it mean? Where was the commitment to Christ? You're right in that it's easier to say you're a Christian than it is to live as a Christian, to live in Christ, to disciple the nations, to evangelize, to enact the Great Commission. It's challenging. And I suppose we didn't have to pay that price for most of recent history. And this is why it was taken for granted. And it has become, not just in those calls to action, but in general in society, has become embarrassing. And so people, particularly in England, don't have that conversation about Christ. There's one of the things I like about the States in that it still is had as a conversation. I can be sat in a cafe, minding my own business, whether I'm wearing my collar or not, and I can hear people on the next table talking about Jesus. I can be sat in traffic and I can see Bible verses on the back of the truck in front of me. I can see billboards with Jesus's name boldly proclaimed. It's all quite amazing to me because it's not part of our culture in England anymore. It used to be that we took it for granted that we were Christian. Because we took it for granted, it's no longer the case because we haven't had to fight for it. We haven't had to fight for our faith. We haven't had to proclaim Jesus' name under oppression or persecution. We haven't had to fight for what is right and what is true, what is good, what is beautiful, who is all of those things. And so now we're beginning to enter a period where we do have to. And so, as I say, that's where the faith thrives under that persecution, which is probably why it's being permitted, why God is allowing these wicked times to happen, so that we can reconnect with him and realize how important that he is. He is the most important thing, and we've forgotten it. We've become embarrassed and ashamed of it, and so massively we need a revival, and that has to start somewhere. And I genuinely believe it's going to start here in these United States, in the West at least. But of course, our worldview is very Western. I've been to Africa and Asia, in places where Christianity has been persecuted for a long time. And of course, it is growing because of that. And they're so much stronger in their faith. And it's funny because we in the West sent missionaries all around, Africa and Asia and the rest of the world. We spread the Christian faith. And now we've lost it at home. We kind of need them to come back and disciple us, bring the gospel back.
I think, though, I've heard that is kind of the way that other nations do view us, like in China, where they'll pray for us for persecution. When Chinese go to jail or something, they say, "Thank you, Lord, for allowing me to share in your suffering." Now, that is a biblical concept, but I don't know that I was ever taught in the West that you should want to share in his suffering. To me, I think we're taught that suffering is an aberration, that
Yeah,
we're
we are.
you know what I'm saying? That we're being attacked and that God must come and intervene because the enemy's trying to destroy me, but he'll jump in and take care of that. Well, I'm sure that every Nigerian family Christian who are watching their family be butchered is thinking, God, anytime you want to step in, feel free. And he doesn't, often doesn't, including his disciples that started this whole thing. So there is something sacred about persecution.
Yeah, and he said we will suffer and we'll be blessed because of that suffering. We are a faith of suffering, of finding the joy in suffering and realizing that there's something sanctifying about our suffering. And because we are impure, we are unholy, we are unworthy. And so part of that process of becoming worthy, becoming holy, becoming pure is through the suffering. And that's why he permits it sometimes. And sometimes he does help to prevent it. But the modern society is the work of the enemy, saying, you shouldn't suffer. You don't have to suffer. You can avoid suffering. You can live a life without suffering. We know that not to be the case in Christianity. But the woke idea, which is a tool set of the enemy, is whispering in our ears all the time, saying you should be able to live a comfortable, convenient life with no suffering. Why not? You are owed it. You deserve it. And of course, we're not owed it. We don't deserve it. And when we try to live lives without any kind of suffering, we end up building no resilience and having no stoicism, and becoming wet wipes who cry after having to work a 9 to 5 shift in Starbucks. there's no wonder the world is falling apart, because everyone's so weak, because we've done everything we can to avoid picking up our cross, when Christ explicitly told us to pick up our cross,
Yeah.
to join him at the foot of his cross. But we've avoided it at all costs.
Well, and just even pragmatically, that is true. Suffering, you always grow more from pain than pleasure. You just do. I don't grow from everything went right. I grow from when it went wrong and I had to overcome it. I mean, that's about as basic as it gets. I don't want to lift this weight. It hurts. It's hard. It's heavy. It's difficult. But if I do, my brain will tell my muscles, we have to fix this because it's too much. So let's begin to grow cells and strength and power so that we'll be able to handle this, because apparently we're going to do this now, is lift this weight. So let's get to and adapt to where we can do it effectively.
Yeah.
So the pain always precedes the pleasure. But this is just psychological. I mean, do you find it interesting that maybe the traditional Christians, or those who grew up with a traditional Christian family or in a culture that at least respected Christianity, whether you were a Christian or not, and assumed we were kind of Christian, do you find it interesting that as much as many of those traditionalists have abandoned their faith, on the other side of the spectrum, we're getting people who are acknowledging and finding interest and intrigue at this and wanting to pursue the exploration of it, who seem to be the most unlikely candidates. One of the best, one of the greatest apologists for the Bible in the last 10 years, 5 or 6 years, is a non-Christian named Jordan Peterson. He says this Bible is necessary. This is it. This is the magic. Now, Young was a big fan of Young, who apparently started this whole meta narrative, or was a participant in it. So maybe he got his influence. But he definitely takes the Bible very seriously and thinks it is a access to reality. The stories are true. Like C.S. Lewis said, it's the true myth. And then you get a Joe Rogan who was anti-God and mocked in miracles. So they go, well, maybe I need this Jesus guy. And then you get Russell Brand. And this always scares me, because when somebody has that kind of a presence, you're like, dude, if this is true, I don't know if you're I hope you are. You certainly are making the right words. But man, you might want to lay low, because this is going to be hard, and you're going to be attacked, and you may not want to be sort of on the big screen until you feel pretty secure in your faith. But nevertheless, people that would seem to be the antithesis, and have been, of our faith, suddenly they find themselves being drawn to it and embracing it, or at least giving it a look and giving it some sense that it deserves a place at the table. Do you think God is sort of weeding out the wheat and the chaff and saying, I'm really not interested in churchgoers. I'm interested in Christians. I'm interested in the people that are here actually live the supernatural naturally, as though you really believe this is true. So if he has to go to other places, if he has to go find rocks to shout, then that's what he'll do. I mean, do you think it could be maybe a great awakening? He's just going to the lost, and just starting sort of a new reemergence of the church through those who would never have given it the light of day 5 years ago?
Well, I think God uses everybody, and he's very active in his creation. And so he will even use atheists to point people in his direction. He will use people who we least expect. And of course, we often think that we've got to be the most religious figure, nuns and monks and that kind of thing. But that's not what he calls us all to be. He calls many people to be secular, to be in the world, although not of the world. And so when he's using figures like Jordan Peterson, I think this is a very good thing. And of course, if he can help lead people to Christ, good. I hope Jordan Peterson eventually is led to Christ too. Russell Brand is another fantastic example. But we as Christians have got to be careful of how we see these people. So my message is always pray, 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 more especially for people like Russell Brand, because if he's come to know Christ and he's publicly proclaiming that on the platform that he's had already, there's a reason that God has chosen him. So it's great exposure, right? In a way that isn't naturally assumed. But that means the enemy will be targeting him. And so what we as Christians have to do is cover him with a shroud of protection. We have to pray ceaselessly for him. And what I see happen quite often is people are actually willing him to fail, willing him to fall over, willing him to drop his cross and not pick it back up. Saying, oh, this is fake, or this is trying to judge his heart as if they are God, or this is not the kind of guy we want as a Christian, which is falling into that old trope of, there's a certain way to look like a Christian, or forgetting that all the saints had questionable pasts, but this is part of sainthood. It's part of that sanctification process that we talked about, that none of us are pure and holy, but we should be aiming towards that and repenting of our past sins, not pretending we never had any. And so we see examples of this. Kanye West was another one, came to know Christ, had a massive platform. People were willing him ill. And of course, he was a target for the enemy. And I think he fell. I don't think he's managed to pick himself back up. It seems he's now doing pornography with his latest mistress and kind of gone all down dark paths. But part of that is on us for not praying through him, for not believing that he believed in Christ, thinking like some kind of superiority complex that we are the good Christians and the famous ones and the bad ones. It's all bad, and a lot of that is on us. And so I hope that doesn't happen with Russell Brand. I hope that enough Christians can respect a man's faith journey as much as they respect their own and keep him in their prayers. And for all of the high-profile Christians, they are leading people to Christ. Celebrity culture is part of is a massive problem in our society, but God can use bad things for good, right? Hollywood, den of iniquity, but God can use that bad for good, and he does, and he's doing this very actively. So we need to work with him. We need to work in his direction. We need to pray through these people, pray over these people, and not expect, want, or will them to fall to sin.
Well, I take my faith seriously. I try to live it. I try to soberly, with fear and trembling, work it out. And I know how difficult it is. So it's not that I in any way diminish his platform or that he's sitting there saying, I love Jesus. You're sitting there going, I can't believe I'm hearing what I'm hearing, because it's legit Christian doctrine that he's talking about. My concern is I don't think he understands what's coming.
I'm with you. And I think the problem is none of us do.
Yeah.
And those of us that think we do understand are probably the ones who are more susceptible to sin, because that's pride when we think we do understand. You know what I mean? The problem is that none of us are perfect, and so we can't expect the moment someone turns to Christ for them to be perfect. I saw Russell Brand in particular took a lot of criticism for selling some magic crystal that protects you from Wi-Fi or something. Stupid thing to do. Clearly a mistake, but it needs to be told why that's a mistake, educated, and brought back on the right path, rather than cast to the side and said, no, told you he wasn't a Christian, which is what I saw a lot of Christians doing online. They are at fault in that as well as him. It's not a binary thing, unfortunately. But it's a trap we can always fall into. And again, like you said at the start of the podcast, it always comes back to pride.
Yeah.
So we have to be careful.
So the hard question is, and it's probably not this simple, but I guess it's a great launching point to kind of, as we get closer to wrapping this up, as far as the ideological framework of where we are now and as a human race. Like you said, if America goes, what's left? Seriously, I mean, where would you go for free speech if the most powerful nation on earth, which has embedded in its rights, Bill of Rights, free speech, and to redress your government without being shot, and they can't come in and edit the press, and that you can protest if you do it peacefully, and that they cannot in any way forbid you from your religious belief systems in public and private, as opposed to this remembering of history as though the First Amendment meant that we have to keep religion out of the public sphere. Actually, no, it belongs anywhere at once if you're taking the Constitution as it was originally intended. So we have this history in the West of the Judeo-Christian foundation. God certainly honored us because of it. And then we have people walking away. Now, that leads me with sort of two conclusions. Either A, he has abandoned us, right? Once you have become fully heretical, you're left to your own devices. And that, I guess, could mean that you become Sodom and Gomorrah, that he says, I'm done and bye-bye. Or you can come Nineveh. Bye-bye. Oh, you're changing? Okay. Is England dead?
I believe so. I can't see any way to turn things around, not politically or democratically. Doesn't mean there can't be a revival in England. I pray there is. That would be fantastic. But I think England as we know it is dead. It's been on a downward trajectory in every moral sense for 100 years. Whatever comes next, I hope, is built on Christian foundations. But I do want to push back on the West wasn't built on Judeo-Christian values. The West was built on Christian values very explicitly. This idea of Judeo-Christian is a very modern interpretation. It's kind of a reinterpretation. Most of the founding fathers were Christian. Most of the first states were explicitly Christian in their constitutions before the United States. These United States were Christian. England has always been explicitly Christian. Not to say that there isn't a Jewish element to our Christian faith, but we are Christian. We are followers of Christ. Christianity is the fulfillment of Judaism. And yes, we have the Old Testament, but the New Testament is the fulfillment of the Old. So I think it's important to state that, because once we allow the watering down of Christianity and put something before Christ, whether it's Judeo or anything else, we're watering down the faith. And it's important we don't let the Jews do that any more than we let the Muslims do that, because everyone wants to water down the Christian faith, because it is the only one true faith. It is the only way to God the Father is through the Son, and that means everyone, including our beloved Jewish brothers.
Why do you think you were able to rise above the mediocrity of English Christianity or the malice towards people that are traditional Christians? I mean, it's absurd. I even have to preface what a Christian is, that you actually believe the Bible and you live by its standards. But you came out from amongst them and took a stand. It cost you a lot, but you don't care because you're a believer. It's like, whatever it takes, I'm in, God, so you just do with me as you please. But something must have sparked your virtue, your commitment to taking this seriously that everybody else is missing or abandoning. Perhaps whatever that is could be of assistance as people watching right now who are either dabbling in the faith or are struggling with it. There must be something grander to this that maybe I'm missing that I can retrieve in my faith.
Yeah, that's easy. None of that's me. I'm a sinful man. I'm a wretched man. I'm not strong. I'm not virtuous. Certainly not holy. I rely on him for all of that. He is my strength. He is my courage. He is my conviction. He is my virtue. I have faith in Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. Therefore, everything is possible. I don't understand. I didn't rise above anything in England. I got fired from my TV job. I got kicked out of the Church of England. I got kicked out of the Conservative Party. Every form of public life persecuted me as much as they can. But you're right, none of it mattered because I believe in him. He is everything. And surely everyone that believes in him believes that. I don't think there's anything special about me. I find it baffling that more people aren't willing to lose everything for him. He is our world. He is the Alpha and the Omega. He is the greatest there ever has been. And having faith in him gives us courage. It gives us hope. Faith, hope, and love come from our divine creator. There's nothing more special than our relationship to him. I don't understand why anyone would put anything above that.
You talk like an evangelical, and you're a Catholic. And so, and I didn't mean that disparagingly, like it's
No.
like it's a dichotomy, but it kind of is, right? I mean, let me give you an example. Years ago, I was, I don't know if you're familiar with who I am or my career in the US as a Christian comic, but I've been doing it a long time and kind of helped create that genre, so to speak, give it hopefully some sophistication, some respect. And a number of years ago, somebody had reached out to me in Massachusetts, parents that help run a Catholic youth camp. Now, they said, have you ever worked with Catholics? And I said, no, actually, I have never done one gig for a Catholic church, and I would love to. I always felt like, wouldn't Catholics find this interesting? And, whatever, because I've kind of always just presumed that if you believe Jesus Christ is God and died and is the only way to heaven, then you're a Christian. And that means if a Catholic thinks that, then he's a Christian. And we clearly have some differences of opinions theologically, but they're not essential. I'm like, I'd be interested. I said, like, I ask you something. You know, I'm a Protestant, right? I know. Well, you know, kind of what I stand for. I know. I said, well, why? He said, well, because we had a local diocese or something. I don't know all the nomenclature, but that wanted to take over the camp. We see what you guys are doing. This is wonderful. We want to take over. And they said no, because we are evangelical Catholics and we want to talk about Jesus, not Mary. This is what she said to me. So I'm like, okay, I'm in. Came in. There's all these Catholic kids who probably didn't grow up studying the Bible like the Protestants have. It's not necessarily part of their history. I mean, in America, obviously, that you guys have quite a rich history in studying the Bible. But they loved the show. They laughed. It was wonderful. I said, "Oh, this is great. I'm with Catholic kids. Look at that." And I gave them I said, "You guys should be proud of you have Aquinas and you have Augustine and you have Chesterton and you guys, you know, and you created university." You know, I was trying to find, you have somebody to be proud of, your lineage. But you need Jesus. You need to make sure that he is the key. They brought me back the next year and they said, "I just need to let you know, during the gay marriage thing, said, we just need to let you know that if one of our priests just came out, said that, you know, he's gay and maybe get married. I don't know. It was something crazy." He goes, "Just let you know." It's just a year later. I'm doing my show. I bring up the thing about gay marriage, and I remember having some Q&A afterwards, and the kid says, "Yeah, I love your show. You're funny, but I got a problem with your gay marriage stance because I think God loves everybody or whatever." And I'm like, "Look, you can believe what you want, but that's not Catholic. So why are you here? Do you take your faith seriously or not?"
Mm.
And the priest, by the way, apparently was there. He walked out. I saw a guy walking out. So it was a terrible 1 year to show how corrupt things can become. I left the show. A youth pastor came up to me and he said, "Hey, man, I loved what you did. Thank you for your courage. I need you to know something. I'm gay, but I abandoned my desire for the cross. I'm married. I have kids. I desire guys, but I chose to do what the church would expect, what God would expect. So thank you." It's like, dude, you are much more honorable than me because you are circumventing your desires for a greater good, for a sacred good of the holy matrimony. So I have this kind of mixed bag of interaction with Catholics because you're so important to the history of the church, but clearly we have some issues, and I think we need each other right now. So can you help me understand kind of, is there anything I'm missing to my perception of Catholicism or our integration of Protestantism, which doesn't make sense because we protested you. So I mean, it's kind of the elephant in the room, and we're at the tail end of the talk. But I feel like you and I have talked like brothers today, and we're trying to help people come to Christ. And we have these different denominational standards, and so I don't even know if I know what I'm asking you, other than help me
Mm.
find the ecumenicalism that we need more than ever as Christians in the body.
Well, I think this is where God's working throughout creation at the moment. I see this. Denominational lines are being blurred because the church, big C, is being corrupted from within by the enemy in many ways, whether you're talking about Anglicanism, Roman Catholicism, Methodism, Baptism, Baptist. All of these bodies that call themselves churches are being eroded and corrupted with worldly views on, you mentioned sexuality, that's one of them. You know, transgenderism is another, Black Lives Matter was another, patriarchy, feminism is another. We're seeing that it's being chipped away by liberalism, by the enemy. And so the true small o Orthodox Christians are finding each other and coming together in their faith in Jesus Christ. And there's a new unity being built where I think the church is being pushed back together. I think there's a mending process going on there that clearly has to be God's hand. And when you ask, like, between Protestantism and Catholicism, things like that, I think we have to remember that Protestantism was protesting against things happening in the church, and unfortunately, much of that led to throwing the baby away with the bathwater. And there was never a movement to create a new church or new churches, but we've ended up, because man is sinful, we've ended up with hundreds of churches and thousands of denominations, and people belong to all kinds of bodies, when we should just be one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. We should just be one. But Christ has one body, and what we're doing as sinners is tearing him limb from limb and claiming our own corner of his church as superior to the other corner, when actually we need to be putting those limbs back together and saying we are, as you just said, we are brothers in Christ, because it's our faith in him, it's our baptism in water and the Holy Spirit, it's our repenting of sin, and it's our faith in Jesus Christ as our Lord and Savior that gets us into heaven. That the gate is narrow and he has showed us the way.
Amen. I just don't know that that's always the way I have perceived how some representatives of the Catholic Church have identified themselves, how they represented themselves. And it felt like we had two different versions of faith in Christ, that there was sort of this additional elements that were demanded that were just not what Protestants had accepted as viable or authentic. And listen, I could be wrong too. I don't care what I believe. I care what is true. That's supposed to inform how I believe. And so I want to be cognizant of your time. I tell people it's usually about an hour, and we've gone longer, but I don't want to presume that. But
I've got to get onto another show in 2 minutes.
Okay, so I'm just going to leave you with this. If you would promise to come on again someday, I would love to just talk about Catholicism and Protestant and find what we have in common, and see if we can find what you're saying, a mending of the body back together again, because there's nothing more important. There is nothing more important than us finding unity. We are in the battle of our lives. We are fighting an existential threat that I believe is spiritual, but and like you said earlier, it's always been spiritual, but this seems to be so blatant, so aggressive, so dominant that it feels like it's one of the kind, almost like my hope is it means God's wrapping everything up. Like he's saying, this is it. We're heading to the end. Last chapter, so buckle up. But anyways, thank you so much for being with me, for coming on. I respect your intellect. Like I said, I saw your conversations. I said, man, I hope I could talk to him. I'd love to get a fellow brother in Christ and just go over these things. But do you think you could come on again sometime?
I would love to, Brad. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me. God bless you. It's
my pleasure, folks. This is Father Calvin Robinson. If you're in Michigan, in Grand Rapids, go see him, say hi. If you're a Catholic, enjoy it. Make that your home church. If you're not, go say hi to them anyways. And remember, if they ever say you're politically incorrect, just say thanks for the compliment, because the last thing you want to be is a Marxist. And always remember to speak truth. If you're a Christ follower, we are the last truth tellers on earth. This is God's comic Brad Stein, doing what I always do, just putting the woke back to sleep. See you next Monday.